Hello, everybody. Welcome to another event sponsored by the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice. I'm very happy that you are here. We have the publishers, directors of the movie as well, and we're going to show the film. David just made it clear to me it's 52 minutes. 62 minutes, right? I'm making it shorter and shorter, right? And there'll be time for you to have some questions for the people who put the film together, or you want to have questions for Rasan Hall. He's a genius in everything, right? Every time we have a problem, he, like his father and other folks, have made that happen. So the producers and directors are, how do you pronounce the first name? Bajan? Bowen and Ira. There somewhere. There's Bowen. There's Ira right there. And this is if you think about it, these two people have been involved in struggle for a very long time, and I think the film will make that very clear how powerful it is. You get a chance to watch that. So I hope that you'll watch it, have some questions, and for those who don't know, there is food to the left near the water fountain. So if you want to grab some food, it's all gone.
Looks like there were some brownies and they're gone.
David, I know we're out of money, but we'll see if we can get some more. Right? We have no money. And brownies will be available, right? And drinks. That'll be great. So I think you'll enjoy the movie, but also the discussion about what's happened in our communities. And I hope that you'll enjoy it. You'll get some comments as well. As I mentioned, Rasan Hall is a lawyer here in Massachusetts, and his father, who I know, very important. Is he president or something called, what do they call? The Virgin Islands, and I went there, and it was just wonderful. I wish we had weather like that here. This is spring, right? It's nice today, but it's been a pain, right? So I think you'll enjoy the film, you'll enjoy the discussion, and I hope you enjoy yourselves. And I'll turn it over to David Harris.
Well, welcome again, everyone. We're really glad to have you here today. We are really extremely honored and pleased to be able to present this film today. And I want to emphasize that this screening today is part of our annual Stand Against Racism. I know many of you might realize that there are events going on all across the country, in fact, but certainly quite a few events here in Massachusetts. And this is a critically important undertaking for us to be able to participate in naming racism as a force that continues to haunt our society, but one which we must all devote ourselves to trying to address. Our event today is co-sponsored by the Cambridge YWCA, and we're really thankful and glad to have them involved as our partners. I'm not going to say a lot more except to say that for those of you who have been following the work that we've been doing recently, this film stands as a critical piece in helping us to understand what's going on in our society today. As I said, we're extremely lucky to have the folks here. This film has been receiving a great deal of critical acclaim across the country and around the world for giving voice to a population that is far too long unheard, underserved, and without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Bachman to introduce the film, and we do hope you enjoy it, and that we apologize for the lack of food, but I think there'll be plenty for us to consider. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. First off, I want to really just thank the Institute for bringing us here, Professor Ogletree, David Harris, Ernest Owens. You guys really did a great job in Kelly Gardner to put this event together. I know what it takes to put together an event, and I really appreciate the efforts that you guys have put forward. I'm not going to say too much because I feel like I really want to make sure that we save time for a conversation afterwards. One of the things that I want to highlight about this film is that when we started making this film back in 2012, it was hard for us as folks who come to the world of filmmaking and creating media as activists. We really use media as a tool to kind of bring about consciousness and hopefully social change. And it was hard for us to find people who were interested in the topic of police brutality and who were interested in talking about mass incarceration. And thankfully, there was an incredible book written by Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow, which really brought the issue of mass incarceration to the forefront of people's consciousness, and we started talking about this a little bit as a country back when Michelle's book came out. But then, of course, we went through the process of making the film anyways. It was very hard to raise the money and to do this very grassroots effort to create this film, and we released it in April of 2014 and had a really hard time still kind of getting it out there, but we pushed and pushed. And then, of course, Ferguson happened, and everything kind of changed in this country where, a lot of people who had not really noticed, this issue of police brutality and racism in our justice system, all of a sudden there was a spotlight. And a lot of people who've been working on this issue for decades, for a long, long time, were like, wow, okay, people are paying attention. So we really, our film was something that happened before Ferguson, which to me is really important to remember because this issue is not a new issue. So we really are appreciative of the opportunity to come to this university where I do feel like there's folks here that have a lot of influence in ways that they can get voices like the Throwaways lifted up. So the film for us is really an opportunity to showcase a personal story. We're not going to see a lot of statistics and talking heads. That's not what our film's about. It's about delivering a raw and personal experience. And we really hope that all of you can take the time to stay and engage in the conversation because that's really what we're all about. Me and Ira are both here for that purpose. So we hope you enjoy the film and please stay for the conversation afterwards. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. Why don't we give Ira and Bowen another round of applause for this wonderful and timely film. Again, my name is Rasan Hall. I'm the Deputy Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you to the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice for hosting this screening of, again, a very powerful and timely film about very important topics that are impacting so many of us. And so, as we're still letting this film marinate, with all of the images and the conversation and the dialogue that we've seen. Bowen, I'd like to start with you and ask about your life experiences that led to this film in particular, and why this film in particular.
Yeah. Well, so my background is of I come from I'm an educator, so I come from an educational approach to thinking about film, thinking about media, and so I've been a teacher for 15 years at a school called the Free School in Albany, New York, which is an alternative school where students are empowered to really speak their minds. We do a lot of work in the community, and so I started making films in around 2001, and out of a passion for telling stories, and really also specifically telling stories of people who are not necessarily represented in the mainstream, corporate media. So, okay? All right. So, what I did is I started a program called Youth FX, which is for teaching young people in our community where I live, which is the South End, Albany, which is basically the community that you see in the film, how to actually utilize media as a tool to tell their stories, to also document things that are going on in their lives. So actually it was one summer, I was standing outside of the place that I work, and the Free School running my program, and I met Ira. And Ira walked up to me, and he started just telling me about this idea that he had about the film and the Throwaways. And my introduction, my way of getting involved in social justice was through a case in New York that maybe some of you have heard of, the Amadou Diallo case. And that was the first time that I, as a college student, developed a consciousness around, police brutality and the ways that the system is sort of set up to really protect law enforcement officers. Not necessarily, and I think this is such an important thing that we're seeing right now that has to be really exposed, is the ways that the system is devised to actually really disempower communities from taking action when things like this are happening. And I think it's so important also, I mean, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but when we talk about all these cases, if you really sort of go through and analyze, a lot of these cases, the police officers involved had previously been involved in police brutality cases before. So, you know, when you look at the variety of ways that, you know, these stories are coming out, whether it's through someone recording through a camera, like the Walter Scott, which is such a dramatic, you know, piece of evidence, or whether you see in the street cameras or the dash cams. I mean, the media, the imagery, to me is so important. And I think part of what I responded to Ira by jumping on his project is because here's someone who's experienced it, and I want to support him in telling his story. You know, so this was really, I mean, Ira came up with the concept, and it wasn't until we met Michelle in New York City, Michelle Alexander, who actually finally convinced Ira. I've been asking, I said, Ira, you know, your story is the story that needs to be told in this film because it's inspirational and it's empowering. But he didn't want to be in front of the camera because he's a producer himself. So that was a challenge, but Michelle really convinced him. And then, you know, this is where the film turned and it became Ira's story.
Sure, and so taking that point, Ira, it is your story, but there's a particular focus of your life that is this story. And again, the same question, why this story? Because I'm sure there's so many aspects of your life that could have been the story. How did you kind of settle? And Bowen talked about how Michelle Alexander was maybe the tipping point. But what were you seeing? What were you experiencing? What life experiences moved you to the point where you were okay with sharing your life story to be the focus of this film?
Well, like Bowen said, when we first started, we had different people that we were going to follow. They never showed up, so it was like okay. When we started it, we had like you have a storyboard, and the storyboard that we produced was about 3 different people, and they were being shy about being in front of the camera, because who wants their life exposed like that? So we came to a point where we're like, okay, if we want this story to be made, we have to have somebody who's going to be the narrative, who can, you know, bring it into a perspective. And since you're the one who came up with it, then now you have to be that one, or it's not going to happen. And so when they told me that, it was like, okay, now I got to really get on the grind and, you know, have these people, because we shot a lot of footage before I became the subject. So we had like 100 hours worth of footage. How many hours we did? About 150, 200 hours, yeah. And we broke it down to an hour and what you've seen. And a lot of the stories that we did film didn't make the cut. You know what I'm saying? So we were part of the Occupy Wall Street. We're part of a lot of things that was happening at the time. So you got the time span. When we started filming was 2010 until the end of 2013. And Trayvon Martin just happened. And we were like, okay, now stuff is coming to a point. But when we were first filming, none of this was like the topic. Occupy and all that other stuff was the topic. But we knew that this story had something and needed to be told, because this is something that people didn't see. You know, you maybe remember Rodney King from 25 years ago, but from Rodney King to now, things are still happening. You know what I'm saying? My father got shot and killed, like I was telling you, by a police officer back in '79. And by the time that and Rodney King, that was 15 years. But as you know, this stuff has been happening in this nation for forever.
Right. And that's a great point. I mean, I think there is a well-documented record of how state-sanctioned killings of black men particularly, but black people and brown people generally is a part of this nation's history. And so is that somewhat tied, and talk a little bit about, is that tied to this notion of the throwaways? Who are the throwaways and why are they throwaways?
I don't feel that just African Americans is part of that story. There's people that came into this country that have been considered throwaways. The Irish, the Italians, the the people that's coming over from Vietnam and the Asian, population that's coming on. And this country has a big problem with race and talking about it. And everything was under the radar until Obama got elected. And when he got elected, they were like, I was in Northampton, Mass, and Obama got elected, and this white man congratulated me. And I was like, why are you congratulating me? You know what I'm saying? Congratulate yourself for voting for him, or the people that did vote for him. But I knew there was gonna be a problem after that, you know what I'm saying? Because you're congratulating me for a black man winning the presidency when you should be congratulating yourself for voting for him. And so once that happened to me, and I was in Massachusetts at the time, I was like, wow, everything's twisted, you know what I'm saying?
Right. And so looking at some of the way the film starts out, it's setting a context. It's a community, and the community, as you termed it, is the ghetto. And I'm curious, Bowen, as you all were collecting all of this footage and traveling from place to place, was that unique to Albany? And if not, how was it not?
Yeah, you know what? It's not. You know, and I mean, I think that's what when we talk about the issues of mass incarceration and police brutality in the context of the term the throwaways. I mean, essentially what's happened is that, we basically in this country have completely, first of all, I don't think we really ever invested in poor people in this country. But I think in the last, 25 years, if I use Albany as an example, the amount of money that has been divested from the black community and the poor community, working class communities of Albany is stunning, because the reality is there's nothing left then. And then you wonder why you create an apparatus of police. Like you'll see in Albany, you'll see these gigantic police vans parked in certain neighborhoods with like cameras and stuff pointed at people, as they're walking down the street. And the question is this by design? Is this a coincidence? And we all know, when you study things like public policy and you study sociology, when people do not have opportunities to get, viable employment, to find food, living in food deserts, to have, a true, education that gives you an opportunity to make something, out of your life. And I just think like we also got to get away from this idea that it's about getting out of the hood. It's like, oh, we got to get out. Well, why do people have to get out? Why are we not building it up so that it's a community? You don't have to leave. You don't have to get out. That neighborhood, that's where I live.
Yeah.
That's my community. I work with young people that are mostly, black and brown kids, and my message to them is not, I'm doing something to get you out. I'm saying, let's change this place right here, because we have an understanding of what we want to happen in our community. We know, and that, and when you talk about, the throwaways also, it's like where are people when the conversations are happening of what to do to better the community, and where are people when we're talking about how to reform and change, the law enforcement policies. That meeting that's shown in this film. It was funny because I was reading about what's been happening in Boston, and I read about a very emotional meeting that happened a few weeks ago here around a shooting that had just happened, where, it's like, and partially what I see in that room, and because, for us to be there it was intense, to be in that space. It was intense on film, but, being there is that here are a group of people that have never been invited to the table when those conversations are happening. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we need to start from the ground up of creating the space where the people in the community have a true voice. They're not brought in when there's a disaster or there's a shooting or a killing, because that seems to be the only time when people want to, say, well, let's see what the community has. We're gonna have a community meeting now, a response. It's always a response, and I think, we're about proactive solutions, working with the youth, growing our own food, transforming communities from within. We don't need people to come in and tell people what to do. It's just about resources, though, and so that's when we talk about the throwaways. It's people that have been, we're not going to give you any resources. You're not worthy of it. You're a throwaway. That's kind of the concept of the film, and it's everywhere. It is everywhere around this country. It's the same situation.
I think there's a stark contrast that you see in the film when you look at two community meetings that are being held, and the first one is the community meeting in the aftermath of Naheem Cream being murdered by the police. But then there's this meeting where the mayor is rolling out this HUD proposal.
Yes.
Very different environment in a very different collection of people who are in that room. And the one where there's the HUD presentation, it harkens back to the brother was standing on the street pointing out all of the abandoned buildings. And so you talk about creating this space for the community to be a part of the dialogue. How is that tension played out in the city of Albany?
The same, to me, it's the same tension, like when we went to Oakland, we're coming here to Boston, wherever you go. And that's the thing that I think that you pointed out, is that this is not just a circular Albany problem. This is a nationwide problem. Now we need to discuss how we're going to, as us as a unit. So I want to Imani, and I have some people here, Mr. Odom, and some other people that have worked with us here in the Boston community, saying, what are we going to do? How do we get this? So this is not the only presentation we're doing today. We're going to go back into the community after this with the help of these people, and we're going to talk to the people who are directly affected by it. So this discussion that we're having here could give us, some insight into what we need to go in there with and talk to them about. But the thing is that the people that are here, there's the same people that we need to go into the community with and talk about it. See, when you see what happened in Ferguson, there was a great divide, you know what I'm saying? So some of the old school stuff that happened when Martin Luther King was marching and doing stuff is not working now. This is 50 years later. So things change. But the more they change, the more they stay the same. So we need this gentleman here and his insight. We need this gentleman up here and his insight to come and say, yo, brother, you know what I'm saying? This is what we did back in the day. Now, of course, I don't wear my pants sagging, okay? And I know my nephews and all them, they're doing it now. And I'm like, yo, man, pull your pants up. But they don't want to hear that, you know what I'm saying? They're like, oh, gee, stop it, you know what I'm saying? But my thing is, like, listen, they're looking at you at a certain way. How do we present you where they're going to listen to you and notice you, regardless how you wear your clothes? Because, Public Enemy said it before, you know what I'm saying? Elvis was a hero to most, but he meant to me, you know what I'm saying? And him and John Wayne, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that to y'all to say my heroes is different from the heroes that you have, you know what I'm saying? My heroes are Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, all those people that came, Frederick Douglass, all these people that came before. And now I don't want them to forget them. So they need to stay, because Frederick Douglass says there's not progress without a struggle. You know what I'm saying? So this is the struggle we're seeing. But I need all your help. We need to be like, the abolitionists back in the day.
So you raise again an interesting point, though, because there is this divide between the youthful activism of today, some of the things that we've seen in Ferguson and things, organizations like Black Lives Matter, being pitted against some of the more traditional and civil rights movement tactics and organizations. And part of the divide is, one, the tactics, but then also the language that's being used and the asks that are being made, but also the technology that is behind the social movements to address a particular agenda. When you all were filming this, did you see the difference in how young people were dealing with and addressing these issues versus some of those stalwart civil rights activists who have been in the community and entrenched? How did you witness that as you were filming?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see it in the difference between, the young men who were on the street corner, with the memorial. And we actually were telling them when we went out there, we were saying, hey, this is a community meeting. They didn't even know about it. So they actually and you see them in the shot in the meeting. They were at the meeting later. And then you got the people on the Common Council, and it's like, hey, we fought so hard to get to this point. Let's not mess it up. You know what I mean? Like, don't be so loud. Don't. And I think part of what we have to really start thinking about is that all of it is important. all of it's important. You know, it's like the rage and the anger that the young people are feeling that are on the streets, whether it's Ferguson or Albany or Boston, that's real. I mean, that's real, and we have to be able to listen to it and have compassion. And I think one of the things that to me is really powerful in the film, and I really hated to hear my voice in the film, which is at the end kind of asking Ira a question, but it was one of our, you know, people who were helping us with the edit saying that that question that you asked, Ira, you know, keep that question in because that's a question that it's almost like this ridiculous question. It's like, you know, have you ever gotten past your father's death? Well, I think the assumption is that all black people in America have gotten past the brutal history of why even black people are in America. So it's like, well, come on, aren't you past it? Like, get over it, you know? And I think the reality is we've never reckoned with that trauma that was caused by the fact that black people are even here in this country. And then furthermore, if you talk about right now, it's like I work with young people who have witnessed death, shooting, you know, tragedy in their home. We met a young woman in LA, she's 24, she spent 7 years in jail already. She has seen 7 of her relatives shot. 3 of them killed. She's 24. Has she gotten counseling? Has she been able to kind of, you know, deal with that trauma? And this is a powerful, I mean, she was a powerful young woman, and she had this incredible, incredible knowledge and wisdom at 24. You know what I mean? And yet, these are the young people who are saying, oh, well, you guys got to be quiet, like, don't talk. No. You know, it's like, no, we're talking about trauma. You know what I'm saying? And as an educator, what I have to look at when I see some of these young people is like, I need to deal with that trauma and help them to get to that point where they're even able to start thinking like politically and how you're going to use the system and come to a common council meeting. It's like, man, this kid just lost his cousin last year and no one's even talking about it. We're not even talking about it, you know? And so there's this really, to me, this deep-seated, you know, kind of, you know, issues that are happening that I think it's a trigger. It's like, so things are being triggered, you know? It's like, I mean, I remember when we were working on the film and Ira, you know, he had a hard time even watching some of the clips because it was triggering him, you know, and then you have to sit and see this, you know, this man in South Carolina get, you know, just shot and killed and shot in the back, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's broadcast on national, I mean, that's triggering people everywhere because they look at that, and that's something that happened to their uncle, their father, their brother, their cousin, you know, and no one dealt with it. No. There's no justice served in a lot of these cases, right? So we have to think about the ways that we're not even yet at the point when we can ask some young people to be politically conscious in a way that, you know, we want them to be. We gotta let them get it out. You know, we gotta deal with that trauma first.
So you mentioned trauma. I was gonna ask you, Ira, because several times throughout the film you referenced PTSD and how certain things triggered you. What was the process for you to deal with that?
This is the process. This conversation that we're having and being able to have a conversation and an intelligent conversation with people that understand what's going on. Okay, I have friends that I grew up with, you know what I'm saying, in Ithaca, New York, Cornell University, Harvard, and where is she at? Chantel, she knows I did a radio show with her, and she's a visiting professor right here now in Harvard. So the same thing that I grew up with these people with, they're asking me, what are you trying to do? And I'm like, I'm trying to show you a different side because it's not what you've seen, so what is your, and I told them, and I'm sorry to say there's some, Rush Limbaugh, Fox News, that's where they get their information from. And so I'm like, you're not even my target audience. And they got it was a big 300 page, 300 on my Facebook. Oh, you mean we're not your target audience? I said, you already got your mind made up, So I'm not targeting you, I'm targeting those who I know if I can exchange one thought or one person's way of thinking, that's who I'm trying to commit, And Baldwin talks about what's the solution. So we're showing you the cause and the effect. These conversations has to be about solutions. And so we're saying, let's go green, let's learn how to grow food, let's learn how to do certain things that we can help our community with. And one of the things they're trying to take away from us, and me as African American, and a lot of the people I know, we are artists. You know what I'm saying? So you want to take the art away. You want to you know, the things that express stuff, you know what I'm saying? You want to take that away, be it be Paul Robeson, be it be all these people that was before me, Maya Angelou with poetry, all these things, and all these people that came before me, and they had a powerful voice. You know what I'm saying? You're trying to take that away. So why are you trying to take away funding for the theaters and art? You know what I'm saying? When all this together is something that's a collaboration of a teaching tool. So I can express myself in different forms, but you want me to express myself by shooting and killing somebody, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to shoot you with a camera. Like Bowen's teaching his daughter up there to shoot, you know what I'm saying? That's how we're going to shoot you, and we're going to bring it back to you. You know what I'm saying?
And so you touched on something that it reminds me of a clip in the film when there was this gentleman that was, I think, sitting on the stoop talking about you and what a positive impact you were having on the community and how he looked up to you and how he wished there were more people like you. And the question that came to my mind was, well, why doesn't he become more like you? And so you talked about how doing this and having these conversations is showing people the other side, but from your own life experience, what do you think are some of the barriers that keep people like that gentleman from becoming the people that they admire and would like to see more?
I had an experience, and they invited me to be part of St. Petersburg Martin Luther King Day celebration. It was me, Douglas Blackman, who wrote Slavery by Another Name, and Cornel West, all right? We were all there together. So I was the education part, and for them to ask me to come up there and be part of that, that was, you know, I felt very proud to be able to sit down with Douglas Blackman, and these are my heroes, and Cornel West. And then when I hear Eric, yes, and going at Cornell, I'm like, yo, why are we going at each other? You both are, we need to be together on this. You know what I'm saying? So that right there is something that I said we need to stop. And I don't even understand why he came after Cornell, because Cornell's been he's been on the ground. He's been doing more than what Michael Dyson's been doing. All I see Eric doing is teaching at Georgetown and going on some shows. Cornel West has been on the ground and getting arrested and doing certain things. So that brother, I was proud to sit in the back seat with him, even though his hotel room was a little bit more expensive than mine. We went to pick him up. I was like, yo, Cornel, let's take a picture. And he was down with it, you know what I'm saying? But he you know what I'm saying, he was there. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so
he's got his boots on the ground.
Right.
And so I'm saying, why are you?
Right. And do you think those experiences have helped shape who you are? Just like that man was talking about, he'd like to see more people like you. Something happened in your life that made you into the person that you are. Would you say those experiences, the people that you've encountered, the things that you've done have shaped who you are?
You know, it has shaped what I am. And what I would like to see more of is people like you and people like Mr. Harris up there. Chantel's already doing it. Coming in the community more and getting with those who don't have, you know what I'm saying? They need to see you guys. You know what I'm saying? You're the academia. They know where we at, you know what I'm saying? I can get raw and real with them. You know, we boots on the ground, and I could be there fighting with them. But we need the academia to come in and get involved with it, you know what I'm saying? Don't forget where you came from, you know what I'm saying? Because you're here for a reason.
Can you open this up to the floor, though? Can you get some people, just because they're saying things that I think are very powerful, and there might be people in the audience that can add their perspective on what these gentlemen are saying.
So
That are real.
I agree wholeheartedly, and my format, how I moderate when I'm the moderator, is that I like to let the panelists speak because that's who we're here for, but then I open it up to the floor because what I found is that when I open it up for questions, people like to make statements, and we don't get a lot of answers to those statements. So I want to try to get as much information from these brothers right here and then open it up, because you're right, I agree with you that there is a lot of wisdom and collective knowledge in this room, but everybody, I think, has come to hear them, so I want to try to get as much from them before we get from the rest. So, but thank you for that comment. And so, you know, one of the very live tensions that's picked up in this film and that is a current through conversation today is this distrust between police and communities of color. And so you've talked about how this is not new and how this is something that has been going on. How did you see that play out in Albany besides just that community meeting? How does that distrust, where does it come from? What is that experience like capturing it on film?
Well, you know, it's also like a historical, you know, perspective in Albany. I mean, there was an organization called the Brothers that came out around the time of the Black Panthers in Albany and specific to Albany, and they were bringing up the same issues that were being brought up today in the context of why are communities even under siege by the police? Why is there, you know, why are we talking about so many young, you know, black and brown kids picking up guns? And why there's so many drugs in the community and things like that. And one of the interesting things is that you had the same issues happening 30 years ago, and so we have to look at one of the things that people were saying. Well, how come there's no more? You know, there's not more dialogue between why doesn't the community reach out and dialogue with the police? And the question I have is, where's the responsibility for the police? You know, the police are the ones we are paying their salaries as citizens. Where's the responsibility on them to say, okay, you absolutely have no choice but to implement not only policies around community policing, but, you know, training, you know, around like, you know, racial bias training. I mean, there has been some forms of training that have happened in different, you know, police departments. I read a story about Las Vegas. I read a story about, you know, I think it was Milwaukee, other cities that had some drastic issues, and then they did some, you know, more proactive work on it. But ultimately, at the core, to me, of the issue is that you still have not dealt with the fact that there's historical reasons why these communities even need to be policed so heavily. You know what I'm saying? And it's like one of the things that we can't ignore the fact that, you know, there's a whole complex of issues that create a community where a young brother has to even have a gun and carry it on him at all times. You know what I mean? And where, you know, when we drive out of Albany this morning, that you got on the street corner, you got 6 guys who are probably, you know, between the ages of 18 and 24, and half of them can't even read. And so what else are they going to do but hustle on the corner? You know what I mean? And these are people I know. I grew up playing basketball with them. You know what I mean? And watch them go from, you know, 8 and 10, 9, 10-year-olds to now they're 18 and they're standing on the corner. You know what I mean? And they got no other opportunities. And so we have to address the education system. You know, going back to that question that you brought up to Ira, the thing he forgot to tell you about the presentation at the high school is they cut off the movie about 10 minutes into it. Okay? They cut off the movie. And why is that? Because they're hiding the truth from these young people of what is this country really about? How do we actually have honest and real conversations about history? I mean, you know what happened in Oklahoma? They try to get rid of AP history because you actually don't really get true history lessons in our educational system unless you start doing advanced classes. You know, my son took AP US history. His book was this thick. There was one paragraph about the Black Panthers. One paragraph. So why do we have to come to higher education to even have a class about black history? Why is that not taught in high school? You know, so we have to, and these are things to me that by design. You know, it's not like, oh wow, I'm so surprised. Why is that not taught? You know what I mean? It's like there's a level where, you know, we have to start thinking about the consciousness raising that was happening in the 60s and the 70s, and why was that pushed back against? You know, why was there such a forceful response to black nationalist movements and black power movements? You know what I mean? Think about these things, and then maybe the solution is there is no hope except to educate our own people. Maybe that's the answer that people have to start looking at.
That's why.
You know what I mean? And it's like feeding your own people, feeding your own, you know, self-sufficiency.
Yes. And that touches on this last question that I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to open it up. But Ira, in the film, you talked about, being so thankful for YouTube and Vimeo as these online platforms to have access to video, but also to put out and produce media. And so how can that be used as a platform for a lot of people who are otherwise voiceless?
First of all, there's been a shift in what we're watching. We used to, and I know some of you people here may remember it, and some of you may not, but we used to do Bill Withers, there was music and there was productions that was being presented, and Bill Withers with the music he was doing, Earth, Wind and Fire, Harvest for the World by the Isley Brothers. I can name many groups that were, and my thing is, okay, everybody wants to be a rapper and baller, okay, and only a percentage of you are going to be that. But if you learn how to play an instrument, if you learn how to do certain things, you're always going to have that skill. You know what I'm saying? You may not know how to read the music, but you know how to blow a trumpet. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is that you need to learn how to do certain things, and we need to emphasize going back to the basics. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of things we're talking about is going back to the basics. Because I know Louis Armstrong and Mr. Handy and all these other people that started the blues and started all these other stuff didn't have anything but that horn. You know what I'm saying? So they'd have nothing. After they came from the fields, they went and played the horn. You know what I'm saying? So we have to express this on our young. You know what I'm saying? What Bauman was talking about, these people, they don't have the education. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, we've been doing these experiments from the beginning. You put rats together, and then you take the resources away from them. What they do, they eat each other. So what's the thing is going to happen in Chicago projects, or the New York projects, or the St. Louis projects? When you take away the resources from these young people, what are they going to do? They're going to start eating and killing each other. So I'm not surprised by the outcome that you want to say, but if you give them the resources, then they're going to be productive members of society. And my thing is, how do I make these young people become productive members of society? You know what I'm saying? So I think I have a plan. They don't want to listen to me because I'm just but they will listen to me eventually. Right. And I think and it's cost effective. It's something that we all can do, and we all don't have to starve. We all can help each other. You know what I'm saying? So I need everybody in here you need to be on the same wavelength, and we gotta say this is the thing. We're all maybe different colors, but we all bleed the same. We're all one race, and that's what everybody's got to understand. Right, and that's the human race.
Thank you. So now, are there any questions that we have from those who are gathered for our filmmakers? Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. I noted that in the film there was one person, I think she was the woman being interviewed after Michelle, who commented on the community policing construct and how that still does not, it was kind of a squishy idea. It really doesn't address the stereotypes that exist in the heads of police officers. And that brings up what you were referring to, the level of distrust from the police towards members of the community. And when it comes to places that you have been in, Ira, like Albany, I was wondering what specific efforts have you observed, if any, that have tried to address that aspect of this whole situation?
There was a situation where...
Real quick, Ira, I'm sorry. I've just been given an instruction to kind of summarize and repeat the question for the purpose of the recording. And so there was a question, and if I don't do it justice, I apologize, that raises a question about the notion of community policing and the lack of effort in pursuing that model and how it connects to the distrust that exists. Somewhat of a summary, and then you asked Ira to speak on.
And I think what the person in the film was referring to was that the very concept itself is incomplete.
So it's an incomplete
And it
concept.
does not
of
address the stereotypes that we see emanating from police officers.
Right. And so that the stereotyping and the culture of policing that exists.
I
So
can give
what
you a prime example of what he's talking about. After the Nakrim Moore murder, they put the gentleman, he was a black officer in that area. And he did a great job. He was talking to people, the drug dealers, the people who didn't have nothing to do. And he was making a change. And he wasn't arresting people, but he was talking to people, you know what I'm saying? And I guess what? His arrests weren't, what they wanted. So they pulled him out of there and they put this white man back in there. And first thing he wanted to do was challenge me. And I don't know why he wanted to do that, you know what I'm saying? So I got arrested like 4 or 5 times after that, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, is that community policing? Or is that you just trying to get your status quo, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm the wrong one you want to mess with, you know what I'm saying? Because we're going to go to court. We're going to go and we're going to go through this. And then I used to beat the charges, you know what I'm saying? And I had to go to court every month for 2 years while we were doing this project. And every time this guy see me, he would shake his head and get mad. And I'm like, don't get mad at me, man. You messed the game up, you know what I'm saying? Because this is not community policing. What you're doing is harassment. You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about that. And so when I went back to the chief and all them, they were like, I'm like, man, you messed it up. You had the right person there to make a change. You know what I'm saying? So forget about the books. Let's talk about real community policing and how's that going to affect the community. Because we don't need, like he said, these mobile units up in here where all you have to do is go and speak to us. And that gentleman was doing it. And they took him out of there. And that's the same thing going on nationwide.
Another question, and I'm actually going to bring the mic because I realize I'm not good at summarizing questions.
Thank you. George Bryant from Revolution Books. But what I like most about your film is you look at the whole environment. You don't separate the issue of police from incarceration, from the politics and economy, and taking away the jobs. It's a whole framework and system that's been set up to fail our young black men and Latino men. Straight out, it's been set up to fail people. Now, you can make people feel better about their circumstances and build community, but you still got that reality. The people in the driver's seat have different priorities. Look at the news, for example. They're more concerned with keeping the Iranians out of Yemen right now than what happens to anybody in any of these black communities right now. They don't give it. You just had Freddie Gray in Baltimore had his neck broken, and nobody will even tell the truth about what happened on that police force in Baltimore. So my question more is the systemic change that's needed. It has to be a new society, a revolution to a new society. But within that, resistance gives people a sense that it's possible. Ferguson was so inspiring that it gave people a sense of possibility. And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really at this point that's kind of the only way that something's going to change. And I think the interesting thing about Ferguson is that the Ferguson movement was like when it first started with young people on the streets getting angry and creating, really creating a lot of noise in a variety of ways. Yes, there was people doing all sorts of, vandalism. There was people really getting pissed off and getting in front of the cops' faces. But what it did is it jarred people, right? It like provoked you to have to pay attention. I think at this point it's like, we're looking at, almost a year later, that movement has to find its way of sustainability, right? So what is the way that it's sustaining itself? Street protest is not going to be the only way that change is going to happen. What it's going to do, though, is it's going to make you have to deal with the issue. You can't ignore when you got thousands of people on the street and they're marching every day. You can't ignore that. You know what I mean? But what has to happen then is the maturing of these movements. And again, I think it just goes back to the fact that, in general, from the time that young people are indoctrinated into our educational system, you are taught to be sort of disempowered and separated from your community. I mean, that's kind of the structures that's set up, right? So we have to push back against that, and it takes community folks, it takes people who are, really committed to this, the struggle of actually engaging in ways that people can put their energy into, right? So it's like, creating, you know, for me, it's like after school programs, summer programs, and the school that I work at are opportunities for me to help young people find their power and realize that they do have a voice, and then give them the tools. You talked about the video and the YouTube and all that. It's one thing to be able to, you know, film something and put it up on YouTube. It's a whole nother thing to be able to deconstruct the way the media works as a tool of power and flip it around and use it as a tool for you to have power. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, there's ways that we have to also support these movements by helping and use, like Ira said, everybody in this room has something to lend, has a skill to sort of teach, you know? But I think like what we have to think about is back to self-sustainability. To me, I'm not interested in continuing to look for legislative solutions, me personally, to these problems. I understand and respect people who are working on legislation. I don't disrespect it. That's not my thing because I don't really have trust that the system is going to actually reform itself that way. What I want to do is, can we get young people started on a path to understanding that their lives are important? They understand that their lives are important. And then therefore, you know, they see their value in a community. That's the hard work, because that's real, like that's like people work. You know what I mean? That's not paperwork. And I think that's harder work, but we have to commit ourselves. So that's the only way we're going to change the situation.
Right here, this young one.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Tufts, and I'm with the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, which is taking a more traditional approach to these problems. We've committed ourselves for the next 2 to 5 years to work on legislation to reform criminal justice. And there is a lot of momentum nationally to make legislative changes, and 20 states have made fairly significant changes already. Many of them, even states like Mississippi, are doing things more progressive than we are. But one thing I'm here today for is that we'd love to meet. We're trying to educate ourselves, and we'd love to meet with any group that's interested in what we do, and we're interested in what you do to try to get a larger community working on this criminal justice reform. And on May 12th, 1,500 of us will be meeting with the governor and the Senate President and the Speaker of the House in Trinity Church and we will represent Christians, Muslims, and Jews in the Greater Boston area, at least 50 congregations, and we will be asking them specific things. And so, love to talk to you.
One thing I could say to you, sir, is like there is groups of people here that you can connect to, and you're doing the right thing by coming here and you're speaking about it. We're going to be doing a community group, and I think maybe, where's that going to be at?
At Encuentro 5.
Yes, at 7. So there's some of the people that you might want to have.
Right at 7, but.
Yes, and come and have this conversation with, because they're going to be the people in the community. These people here.
Yeah, tonight.
Yeah, tonight. It's going to be tonight at 7. Yeah, we got to get there. We're going to have to break this down in about 10 minutes. But, because we got to go to that event. But this is essential that we have this conversation. To me, this is like a town hall meeting, you know what I'm saying? And the thing is, the difference between what we're doing here and what we're going to be doing in the community is that you guys probably would never seen this because you're past on call with those people there, you know what I'm saying? But right outside your door, right outside Harvard, and you know what I'm saying, when we drove up here, we seen people. There's a homeless guy sitting right up the street here. And he's like sitting, I don't know, but he's sitting there and I've seen people coming up to him, giving him whatever he needs, you know what I'm saying? Or helping him out or having a conversation. That's what needs to be done, you know what I'm saying? We need to just say to the brother that says, yo, can you spare a dime? Don't say to him, yo, go get a job, do this, do that. You know, say, you know, have a conversation with that gentleman. You know what I'm saying? That's what happened to me. I was in Northampton, Mass, and it was a blizzard, and I'm homeless. And they kicked me out at 7 o'clock in the morning. Nothing opens till 9. So where am I gonna go? I gotta, you know, raise money, $2 just so I can have a cup of coffee, so I can sit in there. Why? You know, till the library opens. And basically that's where I'm going, to the library. But from 7 to 9, after they kick me out of the shelter, I have nowhere to go. And it's cold up here. So where are you gonna go? How are you gonna survive? You know what I'm saying? I can't just keep walking the street, so I'm gonna go in there. And somebody said something to me, and I was like, okay, so I'm just a throwaway to you. I'm just somebody that you don't even care about. And so I'm gonna show you that I have just as much, you know, my life has meaning just like yours has meaning. You know what I'm saying? And I want to show that about everybody. So what I did was I did a homeless artist project that year. That was since 2008. And the next year I did a summer concert series. And I worked with the community. And that's just what I see. We need to work with our community. It's not the most popular thing, because that's not where the money's going, but we can make that something that where people got to pay attention to it and build these communities back up.
Hi, I just wanted to say, first of all, that I thought it was really great seeing your film, and the scene that really moved me was the council scene with the mother and the women talking about their kids. That I was glad that was a part of it, because that I wanted to hear the mother respond to the children being killed. I wondered what you thought of Van Jones, and I thought that was kind of a weird moment when he went off on that whole thing about people are like throwing away cans and we can't throw away anything. And there was a guy I was noticing who was responding to him. That was the guy I was identifying with. The guy looked at him like, what? You know, what are you saying? And I was just wondering what your thought was on including that, and was I right in that that was part of your intention for us to get that?
I wasn't.
No?
What he said was, you're not throwing away bottles and cans. They're worth 5 cents. So why are you throwing away lives? So these lives are not worth the 5 cents that you put, you know, this has a deposit of 5 cents. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna go, and if I have nothing else, I'm gonna go find these bottles, because I know I can make a living finding the bottles. You understand what I'm saying? So the thing is, how can we change that thinking? How you can put more value on a bottle than you are on a human life? That's the point where we're trying to make, you know what I'm saying? And what he's saying is that let's help the environment, and that's what we're trying to say. So you want to take a tree out, but you want to plant. Johnny Appleseed was the greatest guy I ever known, you know what I'm saying? Because all he did was throw some apple seeds out there, and he grew some trees. You know what I'm saying? And it was Earth Day. So we need to do more of that, you know what I'm saying? And you said the mothers. Now, Earth is a mother. She bears fruit, you know what I'm saying? So if we're just taking from the earth and we're not putting back, what are we doing? So it all connects. And what we're saying, all this stuff that we're saying to you connects. So we have to grow food, we have to plant seeds, we have to do these certain things for us to become, you know, together, you know what I'm saying? Because it's gonna help us in the end. You keep taking stuff out of it, it's fracking all the stuff, the gas, everything that's going on. Take about it, you keep taking stuff out, and you're not putting nothing back in. That's the point.
Good afternoon. Excuse my voice, I have a little bit of a cold. My name is Pastor Kim Odom. And Bowen and Iris, so glad that you guys made it here to Boston. As I was watching the film, and I thank the woman over there for asking that question about the women, because it talked about triggers. Mm-hmm. The film was triggering for me because I'm a mother. My husband and I are both survivors and parents of a 13-year-old child who was murdered in 2007. And I think the hardship for me sometimes is, and I don't want to make as though I'm dismissing this, because I think it really is about all of the above. We talk about the police brutality, and certainly, you know, we need to hold police accountable for their part. When the mother, there was, well, not the mother, there was a woman in there that kept saying they're killing our kids. They're killing our kids. They're killing our kids. And I kept thinking about, yes, you know, they're part of this, but our kids are killing one another as well. And I'm just really concerned, and Bob, when you said it, how important it is that our children know that their lives matter, that they are valued, and that they're not throwaways. because unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be happening. We're not, I think the police brutality piece is now kind of taking the stage, and we're forgetting about the other piece to the puzzle. So it's like, how do we hold it all together to make sure that we're talking about this public health epidemic that is happening at so many angles, and killing our young people, our Black and brown and Latino children, as you said, whether it's police brutality or community violence. And I want to know if there's going to be more of addressing that piece of the issue of how do we get our young people, you said it, to know that they don't, carrying a gun that they shouldn't have anyways, because carrying that gun, they might get a chance to use it and they might not, and if they get caught with it, they're gonna end up in jail anyways doing time, because in most cases, the gun is illegal for them to have, right? And so, investing in making sure that we're creating those opportunities and those resources for our young people. And that's, I just felt the need to add that voice, because I have to say, when my son was murdered, I wanted to understand the root cause of this pattern that was happening in our community, but I wanted to know what happened in that person's life. At the time, didn't know who this person was that took my son's life, but ended up learning that the 3 young men involved did not know my child, but they were all young people recycling in the juvenile system. And so I want to understand what happened in that young person's life that they could come to a place where they could take a gun and shoot another human being. This stuff is happening on our watch as adults. So what are our kids? It's learned behaviors, right? That our kids are learning and for whatever reason, finding that the resolve to their anger, or whatever the case is to take a gun or knife. In most cases, unfortunately, is a gun. We have a lot of gun violence in our community. So how are you addressing? I didn't really see that being addressed in the film, and I want to know if there's a plan for like a part 2 to address that.
Yes. Let me just say this real quick, and then I'll let you go in. I did say something about that, Kim, and I say once they put us in a group and they take the resources from us, we start killing each other. I'll say that's what's going on, okay? And I feel your pain. I really do. You lost a child through gun violence and through these same things. But I lost my father. My brother, he was gay, and he felt bad because and he died in '92. He was dead for 5 days before they realized that he was dead, because he isolated himself and he put himself up in some place. Only reason why they knew he was dead because they smelled him. And we couldn't even, we had to cremate him because we couldn't bury him. The flies got to him, everything got to him. So I understand what you're saying. That's pain. You know what I'm saying? That's pain. But through the realization that this stuff has been going on and the stuff has been subjected to it, they've taken everything that we and we're some loving people all together. We know about love. But the people that taught about love, they killed. From John Lennon to Jesus to Martin Luther King. All these people that express love, and this is the way to do it, they took them out. So the question is, to me, is how do we do this? You know what I'm saying, together. I feel your pain. I do. And I know you've lost a child. You know what I'm saying? My sister just got shot, got killed, and last July 4th. And I went through some stuff. And they arrested me, put me in jail, and I was where Harriet Tubman, Auburn, New York. I got arrested in Auburn, New York. I spoke about it. But they put me in jail for a week without a phone call, all this stuff. And I know that had to do with my activism and all that. But I had to stand up, you know what I'm saying? He couldn't even get in touch with me. I had one phone call and it was like, blah, blah, like Charlie Brown, blah, 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 blah. That's what it was like when I was talking to him. And he couldn't even get me. You know what I'm saying? He was my only phone call. So my thing is, how do we become together as one? We know what the situation, we know the cause and effect, like I said. Let's talk about solutions. And to me, One of the solutions is us coming together and talking about it. That pain that you felt, that was my sister that said that. They're killing off our kids. They're killing off our kids. That's my sister. You know what I'm saying? You know what she's doing now? She's part of the system now. Now she's going to want to become a Democratic, candidate. And I'm like, what are you going to do? How is that going to change things? She's like, well, somebody's got to make a change. Well, I'm like, and say somebody's got to do the voting and somebody. So we all have a piece to play in this. And so I'm just saying, let's keep everything in perspective. You want to speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, it's really, important to have this question be posed. And I don't think it's really a part of the story that we're telling in a full and important way that it needs to be told. Addressing the issue of, young black and brown kids killing each other in their own neighborhoods. I think it's absolutely an epidemic. And at the same, and I think the root cause is the same reason why police are killing black men and brown men, and black people and brown people. I think it's the same root cause. And the root cause is the fact that this entire country refuses to really acknowledge the humanity of people of color, specifically if you are of a lower class. And I think that one of the things that I see in the program that I run, and which the Youth FX program to teach kids filmmaking, is that we've grown from a small program to a program that has 35 students in the summer, and then we work with over 300 kids throughout the school year. And one of the things I've come to learn is that the program is, in some ways, filmmaking is an excuse to create a safe space for young people to gather and be open and real and honest and get into conversations about things that make them uncomfortable and be presented with challenges. We did a film about a drug dealer who uses a gun and ends up killing someone. And one of the things that the kid said when we were discussing the film and we were having conversations about it, and the film is sort of like this morality tale about how he's got to wrestle with this for the rest of his life. He's got to live with the fact that he shot and killed someone. But part of what he was saying is he's like, I'm not gonna lie, holding that gun gave me power. And he's like, and honestly, when I walk around, I don't feel like I have any power. And so that gives me, so we have to address that. Like when we talk about the root, why did these kids do this? It's like we have to address the fact that why do our young people feel the need to even have a gun and walk around? Even if it's less about safety, it's about the power. Why are these neighborhoods flooded with the guns? We did another film about a young boy who was stabbed to death in a park, witnessed by over 30 kids. What did most of the kids do instead of breaking up that fight? Pulled out their phones and started filming it. You know what I'm saying? Where have we come as a society where the self-worth of these young people is so little that instead of intervening and trying to do something, they'd rather film it and kind of make a game out of it, And part of what we realized as we were making this film is that we're not asking these questions. A lot of the kids that we interviewed, because we interviewed young people in the film, as well as the mother of the boy who was killed, was they don't know, they haven't been taught ways to solve problems. So they're saying we want more solutions. We don't want to just have something happens, I'm suspended for 3 weeks, because what is that teaching me? All of a sudden I'm behind in my schoolwork. Now I might as well, not even think about coming back to school because I'm going to fail anyways. It's like a cascade of issues happen. And then what happens when you don't even have a basic, high school education? What are the options for you for work, right? And we know what those options are in our communities, right? And so the thing about this is it goes there's so many root causes. But honestly, what I think is that we need places and spaces for young people to have conversations. We have to stop being afraid to have these difficult conversations. Because you're absolutely right. It is being sort of taken, the issue of police killings has sort of in some ways trumped or been, sort of in the spotlight more. But at the same time, I think the cause of both those issues are the same cause. It's a dehumanization of black life in America. And I think that is really what we have to start addressing because our young people feel it. They'll say it. Honestly, the last thing I'm going to say is one of the biggest issues I have to deal with in my program is I don't really deal with kids. I have kids who come from the roughest neighborhoods and the funny thing about Albany is you have this they call it the uptown downtown split, Arbor Hill, South End. None of that happens in my program. None of that. I rarely see those issues come up. What I do deal with the most is the internalized oppression and racism that goes on. The ways that these kids talk shit about each other and put each other down in a consistent, like that's what we have to address more than any sort of beef about, where they live in uptown, downtown. It's this internalized racism that they're carrying with them and is being expressed, so we have to get at that. And honestly, I'm just going to be straight up, a lot of the white teachers in the high school that I work at, which is a predominantly black high school, have no clue how to deal with this. No clue how to deal with it. That's a major issue. Because what happens? Suspension. You speak up, or you talk, why stop, or you cursed at him, boom. We're not addressing the root cause. We're just seeing the surface stuff, and these kids are getting put, into a system that leads them to prison.
School to prison pipeline.
So Ira gave me the sign. It's
we gotta go.
it's 6:25. You all have another
Okay,
engagement.
we gotta go.
I'll
I'm
defer
sorry.
to y'all. There's
Can we get,
Yeah, that brother.
like,
y'all call the question.
you wanted to say something?
A simple question, and
Do you have a card or something? that you can
Right here,
give out?
man.
Just so that because I'd like to get my town or my public television
Yes.
station in the town to buy your film.
Yes.
So we can show to
Yeah, can we do a quick plug? So we're going to go throwawaysmovie.com is where you can learn more about the film. You can order it through our educational distributor, Third World Newsreel. The card is
I'ma
all
write it
on
right.
there.
I'ma write
I
it.
also want to please
I'ma give
visit
it a
our youthfx.org. Visit that website. Our films have won awards all over the country, international. We just got a film that was selected to LA Film Festival. We played when I met Amani was at Roxbury. We had shown one of our films about a boxing program, a city-run boxing program that really teaches esteem and discipline. And the other thing I just wanted to say is that, right now the film is not available to the public. It is only exclusively available on our tour because we've been asked, we're in consideration for national broadcast on PBS, so we're keeping our fingers crossed for that. But because of that, we cannot release the film publicly on
That's
our,
for sale.
So that's your only chance to get it is right here on this
Yeah,
tour
that's for sale.
where we take the films
these are
around.
true businessmen.
Yeah.
So listen,
gotta be.
I want to get them to their next thing on time, but
You
I
have
want
to.
to thank them, and I want to thank Rasan. They will take a
Yes.
check. I also want to thank Rasan Hall very much. Okay, thank you all. So the one last plug. As you leave, I want to remind you that this was part of the Stand Against Racism. I encourage any and all of you to take a button, to remember that what we talked about today here are things that we need to carry with us and continue.
he's
And
got
thank
it.
you all for coming.
It's gonna work.